Let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Russell Mulcahy, the director of the original Highlander.
I'm Bill Panzer, one of the producers of the original Highlander.
Peter Davis, the other half of the producing team.
And welcome to the director's cut of Highlander, and at long last, and overdue, the widescreen edition. So this is the opening dialogue that Ramiro, Sean Connery, says, and this actually was recorded in his toilet in Spain.
Well, no, I don't think he thinks of his villa exactly that way, but yes, we did send a sound man down there who was a day late getting to Sean because the trains were broken or whatever, and
so you'll notice a slight echo on the sound. That's because it's recorded in a very small room.
Small environment.
Yes.
Very small environment. He did 3 takes and said thank you very much. I insisted that that they play them back over the phone, sitting in England, which...
but with a Spanish connection, we couldn't really tell.
Couldn't really tell, so we thought they sounded just fine.
Absolutely, were we wrong? These are the opening credits of Highlander. These actually were just tests, I think. And for some reason, they stayed on the movie.
There was either a lot of pressure.
I always thought they looked cheap.
There was a lot of pressure to get the movie out by a certain date, or we were running out of money.
I think it was probably that we were just a little short on the cash side.
We were.
At this point.
I think we'd pushed the limits.
Always the case. That's the beauty of independent production, right, Russell?
But I've noticed recently that people are doing these red titles on black, so maybe people thought it was cool.
Associate producer, Mr. Moskowitz. Does that bring back any memories, Pam?
Harold Moskowitz was an agent who I met in a saloon in Los Angeles who thought I was...
in a dry cleaner.
No. He ended up owning dry cleaners, but he was an independent agent who spent a lot of his time cruising film schools for material and found Gregory Wyden.
Who went on to write Backdraft, and I hear it maybe even going to direct Highlander 4.
Young Highlander?
Young Highlander. So this is the scene we shot in Oakland? No, where did we shoot this? New Jersey.
Meadowlands.
New Jersey.
The Meadowlands.
Yes. And originally, in the original script, actually, this was meant to be an ice hockey match.
Right.
But we couldn't get permission from the National Hockey Association. They wouldn't give us the permission for a hockey match. So we ended up with wrestling.
The National Hockey League thought that it portrayed hockey as a violent sport.
Which is true, which is how we were going to present it anyway. It's going to be a bloodbath.
Yes.
Like a regular night. And this is the famous Skycam shot.
How was that done?
Well, this is a particular camera that hangs on 4 wires, and you program it, and basically it pulls one wire in, releases one wire. It's designed by the guy who invented the Steadicam. And it's quite an extraordinary device. It then went on to Tokyo and fell off and actually, I think, hurt someone badly. So it's not used that often anymore, but it was great. It was great in this film.
Is it computer controlled?
Yes, in 1985 computer. Yes. But this was all shot in like one night, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather hastily.
Because it took them such a long time to set up the Skycam, and the wrestlers only had a certain amount of time before they had to go back to prison.
Now, I'm not quite sure. Is this in the American version?
No, it's not.
No. So this now you're starting to see some of the footage that was cut out of the American version, and it was always released in the Japanese and the British version, or the European version, so to speak.
All the intercuts from the Highland battle scenes were cut out of the American
Yeah, this was
version.
deemed as being confusing.
Yes.
In matter of fact, it actually makes complete sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as has everybody who has pirated a European version knows, it makes complete sense. It's just, it was a question of people underestimating the American audience.
Right. So basically, the American version would just cut to him getting up and leaving. There would be no flashbacks.
I think there's a total of about 8 minutes that was cut out of the European version for the Fox release.
Absolutely.
And I think in the scenes coming up, there were some cuts also, the backflips that you love so much, Russell.
Yes. Now, this film, the Highlander, is set in New York, but the majority of the film, it's set in Scotland in the 1500s and New York in the present day. But the film was basically shot in London. This is actually a fruit market in Earl's Court in London, painted out to look like the underground of Madison Square.
Right, because it had
Higher ceiling.
a high ceiling, like
Yes,
an
'cause
American.
English car parks had low ceilings, and we wanted the higher ceiling.
Right, and this was all open. We blacked this all in with God knows how many millions of feet of black fabric.
Right, and as you can see at the bottom, the back says Madison Square, which totally puts you in Madison Square.
Fooled me.
I think this was originally scheduled for about 4 days of shooting, and I think we spent a little longer there, didn't we, Russell?
Probably more like 8.
And, and just a few days of second unit?
The scene grew. We basically choreographed this pretty well as we went.
I think that this scene has more cuts than any scene in the. Certainly has a great deal of cuts compared to most fight scenes.
Well, I think this reel is this the reel that holds the record?
I think so.
With the amount of cuts?
Most cuts in a reel?
It probably does. But in the script, I think it was McLeod goes to car park. There is a fight, and he beheads. So it's 2 lines. And,
Yes.
so it's the classic, isn't it? Why are you spending 8 days filming 2 lines of the script?
Christoph did a lot of training for this.
Yes, this was one of the earliest sword fights. As you go on, I think by the end of the movie, in the final sequences in the movie, we actually shot that nearly in sequence, and the guys actually got incredibly good with their swordplay.
And his opponent in this happens to be the stunt coordinator for the show.
Right.
Let's see. We brought in a special guy to do graffiti because the English were not sure as to what American graffiti would look like.
I think Panzer's just making that.
I think it's a very good story. I didn't know that.
And the sword master on the show was a fellow who.
With Errol Flynn.
Yes, he did train Errol Flynn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And he was a Canadian Olympic champion
Absolutely. Yeah.
and a wonderful guy.
He actually doubled Sean Connery in the sword fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll notice his head is a little smaller.
You're the only one that
sword-
noticed.
We'll point that out when we get to it.
Sword on a little faster.
Oh, you just missed your backflips here, Russell.
Right. They were cut out of the American, yeah?
Yes, it was offensive to some Americans, I guess.
Why is a banker backflipping? So here are the infamous backflips, which are again also cut out of the American version.
Most of them.
I think all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them were out.
Again, I think when this film came out and it was viewed by certain people over here, I think they felt that it was a little out there.
They're more than a little, Russell.
Well,
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
I think maybe not for European point of view quite as much, but certainly in American sensibilities, at least critic-wise.
Mm.
Ooh, remember those reviews?
They were lovely, Bill.
Some of the best.
Well, it's interesting that this is the 10th anniversary of Highlander, and a lot of those people aren't working.
Yeah, but I found, not only with this film, but also a number of other films, usually a lot of times bad reviews actually mean the film's actually quite good.
Well, at least it's different than what they're used to seeing.
Yes. I think unpredictability is quite good.
I think as we're coming to the end of the car park scene, we're about to see your first transition, Russell, which people
Right.
absolutely blew their heads
And also,
off.
obviously, this is the first beheading.
And you really made certainly quite an impression with these transitions.
Right. And
What,
yes.
what was your thinking about those?
Well, the idea was right from the beginning was to basically have something quite unique because the film did go back and forwards between present day and a number of different time periods. That each transition should really take the audience. It shouldn't just be a shock. It should actually take the audience like in time travel.
Without really time traveling.
Right. Just be unique and be exciting. And so it was really a process of thinking of the best ways to do this.
I think that people who saw this film for the first time, one of the things that they really talked about was these transitions that you, because they certainly were not in the script. Not this
They were
one.
not. They were not in the script. Absolutely.
I think I remember you saying that. I think I might have a couple of interesting ways of going from the past to the present. What do you think?
And I was probably lying because I probably didn't have a clue.
Right, but at least you thought that they should be there.
Yeah. Now this is me rolling across this hubcap. I do remember rolling this hubcap.
Now these little
Late.
Yeah.
touches on the end of this scene with the hubcaps and the little windshield wipers going back
Coming
and
now.
forth.
There it is. Yeah, I thought it was beautifully rolled.
I remember you did do that.
I did. Yes. I do a lot of things behind the camera.
Did you put in for an extra?
Yes. Now, obviously, when we
a
did this
bump on
scene,
that?
this was done before we went to Scotland, and so I knew we had to go up into something dark in that sort of movement. And then when we got to Scotland, we obviously built the fence and carried on the movement.
Fabulous.
It worked very well.
This is a great scene.
Beautiful
wasn't it?
location, this.
You enjoyed the time in Scotland, didn't you, Russell?
I did.
Yeah, it was great
Yeah.
fun.
Here, when we get to the battle, that was not fun. But when Scotland presents this type of weather, this type of scenery, it doesn't get much better than this. It really doesn't. And there's very little dressing going on here. I mean, this castle looks like that. You know, we obviously added these things with the dead bodies in and whatever.
Also, the rest of the village, which is built. This is a tourist attraction as well. This
So
castle.
the car park.
Right. So we put it, in the parking lot, as we'd say over here, Russell. The parking lot was covered over with mud and dust and grass, and the entire village was constructed there.
Right.
Are you scared, Connor? No, Cousin Dougal.
good.
I'm not.
Yes.
Christoph was in fabulous shape for this thing. He looked fabulous.
He was, and he was really there in his heart too. I think he enjoyed. You can see it in his performance. He really enjoyed playing this role.
Look at that scene, you know.
Yeah. All locals, all the extras, very wonderful to work with. They just walked up and down this bridge for about 80 times.
Well, lots of people.
Back again, back
Here-
again.
Here's a fabulous shot. That long shot of the castle.
No. Now, coming up here is a scene, again, that's cut out of the American version. Actually, all this is cut out of the American version.
These flowers and think of me.
So this is the whole thing that establishes his relationship with this girl.
You fight with God on your side, Connor.
And the fact that he's going off to battle for the
Right.
first time.
In the American version, when you don't see this scene, you wonder why this girl then started to scream out, "Devil, devil," and you're wondering, who the hell is this? So basically, the American version cut to this.
Now here's a fabulous location also. This is Glencoe.
I remember.
Where
Russell,
many real battles took place.
I remember, Russell, we were scouting this location, which is incredibly boggy. Remember that we're wandering around through there, looking at this and that, and all of a sudden you vanished from sight, and you stepped
Chest deep in mud.
into a hole, and
Yeah.
you're up to your chest in mud and water.
Nearly like quicksand.
So we had to lay planks for the horses used in the scene. There had to be planks for the horses to walk on because it was dangerous for them to go.
But you do know a lot of these scenes here, the scenes with the Kurgan on the horse and whatever, that is actually shot in Wales.
Yes, it was shot in Wales as pickup shots
Yeah,
at the end of the
so
show.
this sequence is a combination of Glencoe, and then later on we went back to do a few extra pickup shots in Wales, which is a totally different
And-
country.
And the battle scenes here were shot in the most inclement weather.
It's horizontal rain,
It was quite harsh.
quite extraordinary. But you have periods of sunshine, then it would snow, then it would rain, but you're totally covered, like knee deep in mud. You had a few sort of enthusiastic Scots running around with axes saying, "I want Englishman's blood," which didn't really concern me because I'm Australian, so I was fine.
No, I think they were really looking for the scotch that was being circulated to keep them there.
I was so impressed by these guys because it was freezing cold. They didn't complain really at all, and all
No,
they
they
wanted
were-
at the end of the day was like a
They were
good shot of
fabulous.
scotch,
They were fabulous.
and that made them happy. And some of them actually slept out there during the night because they came from all over Scotland to be in this film, and they would sleep out there under a tree with a bottle of scotch, and then get up the next morning in their kilts and battle away again.
Nice like that.
Well, you were there, yeah.
And the costumes here that were for these 800 or 1,000 extras, I believe were from Spain and Italy. And Jim Aitchison, the costume designer, personally dressed the vast majority of these guys.
Personally dressed. Yeah.
And we manufactured and researched that the McLeod tartan and the Fraser tartan. So we manufactured that. That's custom manufactured fabric that goes under some of the rented costumes.
Research to the point where Jim Aitchison, the costume designer, and myself realized that this film is set in 15 whatever. The kilts actually didn't exist. Tartan didn't exist. Tartan was invented by in England actually in the 1700s.
But we took a few
To give the Scots an image. If this battle had been filmed completely correctly, these people would have been naked and fighting with bits of wood and whatever they could lay their hands on. We felt that probably wouldn't work.
Would have made tough rating, very tough.
And very cold.
And so we're coming up to a very interesting transition, Russell, that we had, if I recall, a bit of trouble with.
Right, again, here it is. This is the shot, it starts here, the transition. And the concept was that basically we would see this and then it would pull back out of his eyeball, out of his pupil of his eye in New York into his face. We tried to do this many times on film, and eventually I went over to my film editing place where I was doing a lot of Duran Duran videos and whatever, and we just did it on videotape. Sent it to the lab, they still couldn't do it properly, and so what you see on the film is actually just a film transfer of a rough video work print.
Done from dailies.
Done from work print scratch dailies, and that's in the movie because the lab could not produce the desired effect. And
seems to work quite well.
it seems to be fine. I mean, if you notice, it is a little fuzzy, a little blurry, and that's why it is.
Now, doesn't Christoph look fabulous when he comes out of this garage? I mean, what a wonderful look on him.
Most people look good wet.
He certainly does.
I used to look good wet.
Now, this is shot in New York, and we spent approximately 2 weeks shooting in New York to provide the reality of the New York portion of the show, although the vast majority of the show was shot, as Russell said, in London and in Scotland.
Right. Which brings you to the dilemma of most of your cast. When you're shooting the majority of it in London, you have to basically cast American actors who are living in England.
Which is not, once you live in England,
You can find them, but they're usually crap.
and they usually, well, no.
Don't be so harsh, Russell.
They usually sound, they have acquired an English inflection, a British inflection that they're not even aware of.
Here's another transition back to the Scottish portion.
Yeah, if you know, this actual shot is shot by a person that some you might know is Stephen Hopkins, who actually was the second unit director on the film. Stephen used to be my storyboard artist and then my art director, and then I gave him the job as being the second unit director on this film. So this shot is actually shot by Stephen, and nicely done.
And he's gone on to some other interesting things.
Bigger and better.
Done well.
That's the idea. You raise them.
You raise them and they leave home and they never write.
This was the only.
We actually shot this scene because it was raining outside. I don't think we were meant to shoot this scene. But
We shot this at Jacob Street.
no, this was shot on location.
Was it?
This was the only hut. When you see the village later, this is the only hut that we had.
Yeah.
A
We're in the middle
interior.
of Glencoe, on top of a mountain. We're inside a hut. It should have been shot at Jacob Street Studios, but the reason we shot it here, it was actually what they call rain cover.
I see.
And as the weather was rather harsh outside,
No, if it was
we
that
actually used our rain cover, which the insurance company was very happy about.
only time they were.
We were pretty good boys on this.
We
film.
were, yeah.
Damn it, Frank. Forensic
Unlike other times.
at the same time as homicide.
Yeah. I hated this outfit that she's wearing. In fact, I was.
Why didn't you change it, Russell? You're the director.
I don't know. It was a surprise one. I guess we just didn't check this one. But I look at that T-shirt.
Is that a Fraser target?
I mean, I think she's a lovely actress. And I love her to death. But I just hate this outfit.
I'll tell you, the two guys we brought over as New York cops did a very nice job on this.
Yeah, I mean,
Bedzo,
John has gone on to do a number of
Yeah.
films like the Coen Brothers and whatever.
Yes.
But they were very
John,
believable.
He's quite wonderful.
But to get them accepted into the waiver of the British equity was quite a task, wasn't it, Panzer?
Oh. I saw every American living in England who was a member of British Equity, 140 men, videotaped all of them.
For these roles.
For these two roles. And when we finished, and I said, no, none of these people sound, look,
Can
are
hack it.
New York cops, we cast these two guys. There was still protests from the actors in British Equity saying that my 4 days spent in a small video studio directing them was a
bogus.
sham. Yeah,
But they were good.
they were. These guys were good.
Was that a comment on your directing ability?
That's possible. Very possible. That's why I've never directed another film.
Any antique dealer on Hudson Street could tell you that.
So now we're back in.
Now, where was this police station built again? And this
It was actually a location. I think it was an old. I think it was a deserted police station in London somewhere, wasn't it? In the East End.
It was in London.
But we built these walls.
We built the walls.
And Christopher's eyes.
He had contacts.
Love those eyes, Russell.
Right, and this is one of the early dialogue sequences that he did. And we had a what was that lady's name? We had an English
Dialogue
coach instructor, dialogue instructor.
That's
Joan.
whatever. That's
Joan.
because Christoph's English at the start of the show was so wonderful that we couldn't resist.
Right. I mean, this is really the most English dialogue he'd done. Ever.
He did 5 words in Greystoke, right?
Right.
Come on.
Right.
And he'd ordered some meals in English,
Right.
to be fair.
Luckily, it seems to work in this movie because he says that wonderful line, "I come from so many places."
You got it perfectly. when we first met Christoph after we had already signed him to a pay-or-play contract, and he came into the bar, and Bill and I realized he could speak virtually no English.
Exactly.
We were very happy campers. I mean, it was like one of these shocks of our life.
Well,
We were ready to fall on our
It was one of those
swords.
small questions you've got to ask, like, by the way, can you speak English?
No, we asked it,
Right.
but the agent gave the answer. Yes, of course.
Of course, he's an actor.
well, he grew up in New
Yeah.
York.
But he worked very hard on it, and he did extremely well, I think.
The person who tells the best story about this is Christoph, who is not with us tonight. But Christoph tells the best story on himself and about not speaking English and about how the looks on our faces when he said, "Hello, how are you?"
But it's a true story.
He does it. It's wonderful.
I mean, he really, he was as chagrined as we were.
But he worked his butt off.
He did.
And the post-production part of his, when he was on the ADR stage with Bill, he spent 6 weeks of working very hard to put it across.
That's because you fled.
I fled, yes. I don't think I can handle it anymore.
Okay, so the Kurgan is coming into New York for the first time.
Now, except for the title piece, this is the first Queen song that we hear.
Yeah, so this would be the first one in the movie. This is probably my least favorite of the Queen songs. I think they did a wonderful job, but I think this was like a last-minute decision to write this one, and I think
It's
to
interesting.
me, I understand why it was done. It's got the heavy metal attitude of the Kurgan, and I understand the philosophy behind it. I guess I just don't like heavy metal, so maybe that's the reason.
It's interesting how Queen got involved in the sense that they were originally going to do just one song, and then they
Right.
saw a little bit of the
We
footage.
showed them 20 minutes of film, and they
and
fell
then
in love with
they
it.
said, well, maybe we'll do 2.
Well, then what happened is that they all then took different scenes that they fell in love with. They took as their own. Brian May took the one where she's dying, and
Right.
people fell in love with certain scenes, and so they each took separate ones themselves.
And then they finally end up saying, we want the whole thing.
Right. Even to the point where we convinced Freddie to do New York, New York, which he was adamant against doing.
But he did end up doing it.
Well, we put Liza Minnelli on and showed it to him, and he fell in love with it.
He thought she was a voice alike.
Yeah.
But they
I have this thought at home.
I was wondering who had
I
that.
have this sword at home. It doesn't quite go together anymore, but I have it. I love this sword.
Clancy had a lot of input into this, the routine.
Yes, and also I think we brought in Arlene Phillips, a choreographer who did films like stage shows like Starlight Express and a lot of videos. Wonderful choreographer, worked with us on this sequence.
Clancy became the Kurgan, didn't he?
He absolutely became the Kurgan. He's one of the nicest people to meet, but when later on, when he gets into the full bald-headed, safety pin-necked costume, you didn't want to go near him.
He was the guy.
Yeah. Here he was sort of okay.
The gathering.
But that was pure Kurgan. This sequence is pure Kurgan.
He gave a wonderful
Yeah.
performance.
I remember Jim Atchison polishing that girl's ass. If you know, with the plastic.
Yep.
Well, there comes a time in every film where you kind of have to move the plot along. And this is one of those scenes. This guy was terrific. He had a nice attitude about it. I thought the dialogue was well written. And basically, here's somebody being confronted with a situation that, for a scientist, was absolutely, totally impossible for her to imagine that this piece of information that she's been given could exist. And it's this kind of, this is kind of a pivotal thing that gets her out of the lab and
Gets moving.
Yes, but you'll notice the stuff that she's printing out here is complete crap. I mean, this machine actually did so.
absorbance, Russell, happens to be.
what she's doing.
Well, there's very little
It was there, but
absorbance
should
in
be
steel,
confined.
of course. I understand that. But if you're going to be picky at this time, God, 10 years later, still picky. It was the best.
Christoph is still down in the garage here.
Yeah, back in Earl's Court. And I'm going to get a little picky, but there's a fabulous bit coming up, and it's one of my favourite bits, is when she picks out the shard from the concrete.
Yes.
Notice how big the shard is.
Well, you have to see the shard, Russell. I mean, otherwise, it's not a shard
Yes,
at all.
yes, yes. But considering how big the shard is, I don't think she needs a metal detector. I mean,
Picky, picky.
You've never walked the beach at night. Come on. Well, you mean she could have seen it by eye? Yeah. I like to think that she's examined countless columns.
I agree.
Who's there?
God, you shot it.
Actually, I think that was a second unit shot.
Any shot.
If
you
in
don't-
doubt, just
any
blame
shot you
second
don't
unit.
like. Any shot you don't like is a
Absolutely.
second unit shot.
This is.
I see how this is going.
This starts from the Great Train Robbery. It's the same way.
Right.
Now this is in New York, and with our New York crew.
Yes, New York GP too.
Yeah, yes.
That was an interesting crew.
It was. There was a union problem or whatever. The film was basically shot by Jerry Fisher.
Yes.
And then in the American material for that week or 2 weeks was shot by Tony Mitchell.
Right. Who had to maintain the same, who looked at the footage that Jerry had shot and had to maintain the same look.
That was a theory.
It's always a theory.
Right.
Can we get some free cognac out of this scene?
I'm sure you
And
did.
scotch? I think it was
No,
scotch. No. I think we all did, Russell.
No, I think we all got a case of very good cognac out of this scene, Russell. And yours was delivered. I know that.
Oh, right.
Because Bill and I were thinking of hacking up your share, but decided not to because you were such a good guy.
I'd like to walk you home.
It was their best cognac.
Hennessy XO. There's another plug. Who knows? Maybe
We
something else.
deserve another case.
This was also a Queen song
Queen song, yes.
in the background
Yes.
here.
We actually had an abundance of Queen songs, and so that's why that one was put there, because we really didn't have too many places to put them. I know who wrote that song was John. I think John wrote that song. He was not happy about the positioning of the song
No,
on the
he-
radio in a bar. I mean,
He hated it.
normally that means you're not happy with a song when you stick it on the radio in a bar. It's the worst place you can stick a song, because you know it's going to be played
No.
low.
And what happened with the lighting on this scene?
Well, again, it was, Who knows?
Were you happy with the lighting on the scene?
No, but you'll notice here we go from, this is New York, and this flips between New York and London sort of well. This is now we're back in London.
That the matching between New York and London on not only this scene but many
Now in
scenes
New York,
was quite interesting.
London, yeah. And we had to keep a pretty sort of close idea of, so that was New York, London. And these were shot, you're talking maybe, what, 10 weeks apart?
Yeah.
I think the great thing about this whole sequence is that this fight was shot in about 2.5 hours. Now, as far as you probably all know, as far as filming goes, that's a very short time.
You used a lot of Steadicam.
We used a lot of Steadicam, and the whole thing was, it's rather a simple choreography, and there's a lot of, it's very basic, good, strong violence. I think the fight is a good, simple fight, and it was shot very, very quickly.
Panzer, don't you
You
have...
usually find if something's shot that quickly, it's probably working. It's when you have to spend 3 days filming something, it's you're stretching the limits.
You're close to your correct in your time estimate. I think it was shot
It
in
was
four,
really quick.
4 or 5 hours, and I think that the only way it was accomplished was your use of the Steadicam.
No, I looked for an actor here. There's a scene came out with a helicopter. I was looking for an actor for weeks, and eventually we found Bill Panzer, who did his voice here.
You get your credit here.
Some people have a voice and some people have a
It's
voice.
just so perfect.
Were you up there though, Bill? That's the question.
Yeah.
No.
Bill actually wasn't in the helicopter.
And now we're back in New York.
Right.
We brought this wall from London.
Yes. Now the transition here, I didn't really have. So the transition of I think the face that comes across laughing was shot much later, and he's a friend of mine. He actually is a costume designer who did like all the costumes for like Vienna, Ultravox, all the Spandau Ballets, all the Duran Durans. This man here, he's a costume designer, and his sister is quite a famous costume designer too.
His father's a dentist.
No, we were lucky enough. He just pulled those out and said, "Listen, I have this advantage." That was free.
You saw the wind angle.
Now the set here was,
He should have died.
This was back in London.
Was that Jacob Street Studios?
It was
No?
somewhere odd.
yeah, it was someplace odd.
Yeah. This location was probably just chosen because of the ceiling here. I mean, this was shot down in London, and we had a very good production designer, Alan Cameron, who was very inventive. For the limited amount of money he had in this film, I mean, I think he did an extraordinary job.
He did a fabulous job with...
He went on to do Willow and did the Jungle Book recently.
Last night all but a corpse.
He did Far and Away.
Manage that?
Quite a clever man.
Would you rather I was dead?
It's not.
And as you say, he did not have a lot of money to work with, and he delivered.
Right.
And the apartment that McLeod's apartment, he built
I'll say it.
on stage at Jacob Street, and it looked fabulous.
20 years. Connor MacLeod was my kinsman. I don't know who you are. Angus, you better go, Connor.
The haircut by the priest was a very definite design to give a sort of punky quality, that mohawk.
Now, this is a scene that in the American version they felt was too violent and required a number of cuts.
Right. He's punched less.
Head-butted less.
Head-butted less, yes.
What was your vision of how you shot that particular scene, Wilson?
To probably make it as painful and as bloody as possible. It needed to be fairly strong. But this is the sequence that's been cut out of the Americans. This headbutt, that's pretty strong.
That's the set that was built in the parking lot.
Yes, where the tourists would turn up.
We'll banish him!
And turn those buses away.
Can you walk?
Again, all these sequences were shot rather quickly. Like this sequence, for example, was shot in about 4 hours in the morning. Then in the afternoon we would do Coming Across the Bridge, and including this sequence. So we'd all, the cameraman and me and a dolly grip would go up in a little van and rig this. The film was shot rather fast. If you notice way in the background, top right-hand corner, well, it's fading out now, but those houses were covered with army camouflage because they were white houses on the lock. That is an optical shot. The moon was put in later. Now this shot was shot later because we found this face in New York. I shot the face, and then we went back to England. We put a piece of rock up, and we shot Christos' face to match the face from Steppenwolf.
Right.
I think it was a Steppenwolf record album, wasn't it?
It was. It was the Mona Lisa from I think from Steppenwolf album. Right. But it was a.
And we shot that in reverse. We didn't know we were going to get that. That face was just there. We went, this is fantastic. And then, so some of these transitions were sort of backwards.
Yeah, some were forwards and some were back.
Yeah.
Now here's our first look at his apartment.
Right.
Which again was a fabulous design of by Ewan Cameron.
Yes. I'm not sure whether James actually thought Alan thought we were going to shoot this angle, because you'll notice the cutouts on that particular window don't look that great.
Right.
Now we see New York in the background out the windows. Can you maybe give a sense of how those were done, Russell?
They're blow-up photographs of in cutout.
The translights.
The translights.
These are not translights.
No?
No. These are actually, they're photographs blown up and then cut into the shapes of the buildings and the water tanks. The nighttime one later on, in the battle scene, is a translight.
Oh, that's right. So these were front lit.
Now here's his silver room, where he has all of his memories.
So here we're back in Scotland, flashback, and this is what we call his forge. Now only the bottom third of the building actually existed, where you see her walking out. The rest is a matte painting. The funny thing about this location, again, this is in Glencoe, where the barn-like structure here is on the right. That rock there is where Queen Victoria sat, and there was a pile of rocks on it which we couldn't use in the film, but we weren't allowed to move them. We did. It's actually a sacred spot. We built our set and then we put the rocks back, and apparently no one found out.
However, your British passport has been removed.
But this part of Glencoe is quite an historic spot.
Absolutely, yes.
And quite beautiful as we wait for the arrival of Sean Connery.
You can do that to me forever if you like, my lord.
Yes.
What was your sense on the casting of Ramirez, Russell?
I thought it would be interesting having sort of a Spanish Egyptian conquistador sort of speaking in a Scottish accent.
Well, you were ahead of the rest of it.
Thought that might be a good commercial idea. How'd you find dealing with Sean? What was your...
I thought he was great. I mean, admittedly, we had, I think he was on this film for 7 days. And this was probably the trickiest part of the movie, was basically filming all of Sean's pieces within 7 days, including stuff in London and Scotland, to the point where we had to basically go back and shoot Chris's close-ups with a double saying Sean's line sometimes.
Yes.
We didn't have time to complete the whole scene. So, for example, I'm not sure about this shot, but this may not be Sean speaking to Chris there. We would have to come back like maybe 3 weeks later and film Chris because of the time restrictions on Sean's availability.
We covered a great deal of ground with Sean in 7 days of shooting.
He was he actually had a bet with me. I don't think he ever paid up, but I think he had a bet with me that we wouldn't finish, which we did. And he was quite shocked when I said well, you're wrapped. But he's a professional and he's very good and he's perfect in his part.
I think he actually enjoyed his time on the show.
I think he did too.
Well, he stood there at the very end, and when you said, well, that's it, and he said, you sure there's nothing else you need?
He grabbed the script and was flipping through it.
And we were like an hour or so into it, and he was cool.
Yeah. But again, I think also another great costume he had too. I think that costume was quite wonderful.
Yeah.
Jim did a fabulous job
As opposed to
with
her
not only
shirt.
his design.
I had that costume. I donated it to the London Film Museum. It's now
No wonder we haven't been able to find it.
That's where it is.
Now, this was shot in England as well, even though it's a New York precinct shot in England.
You're on.
Oh, by the way, Frank,
Yeah.
the hairs in the Moretti case,
Uh-huh.
they matched up.
What did I tell you?
Oh, I forgot my purse.
I'll meet you outside.
Again, this is one of your favorite scenes, I'm sure, Russell.
Favorite scenes, yeah, but I guess it moves the story along. But I guess the fluoro-lit police locations are probably not my favorite.
Now we're coming up to what has really become what people view as one of the great transitions. Maybe you can...
Well, actually, this one was actually quite a surprise to us all. I mean, it was filmed with the notion of what it should be, but it turned out better than we all thought. And basically, when you get to Scotland, all it is a mirror lens just dipped into the water, and because the water in Scotland was just so dark and whatever, it gave a perfect matte line. And so this is the simplest split matte you could ever do. Very cheap, and even in the lab were in shock. And this is the first try. First try, and it's quite perfect. Everyone was in shock.
And the time that Sean spent in Scotland with Christoph on the Loch, how'd you find that?
This went very smoothly. I think again this was shot very quickly.
And what do you do with it?
It was, again, not great weather.
No. The sequence with Chris was shot later when he goes overboard.
You did that in the tank in London, did you not?
Yes, well actually the stuff of him drowning in the water is quite amusing. When he goes over here, when you see him drowning, actually was shot by myself and Stephen Hopkins on a weekend. We just grabbed Chris, took a cab, and here. This is all shot basically on a weekend with like 3 of us. It was like a home movie. This is back in London in a dive pool, but what happened is when he was doing this drowning stuff in the water here, he went down and he actually, his brain froze up and he nearly drowned. And it was actually a little scary because we didn't have any divers there. So we nearly lost him, but...
But you did. This was a set that was that Jim Cameron dressed in. It was like the YMCA.
This is the YMCA dive pool, yeah. Chris is down there. He's weighted so much he could never get to the surface. There is a diver in the pool, and I've got a little window outside the dive pool, and I'm writing instructions to Chris. But Chris is also blind, so it was rather
That's right, he doesn't have his glasses on.
But he was underwater for an hour and a half, buddy breathing with the diver. His skin was nearly falling off.
Now, I know that the section coming up where they're both on the beach here was done in an extremely short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Did we shoot most of this movie, Russell, with more than one camera?
A lot of this was 2 cameras, yeah. But then surprising amount of like a few little pickups here and there. I mean, again, the fish was shot in Wales that you'll see coming up dropping out of his kilt. That's a double's feet in Wales. It's funny when you look at the film, you realise that one scene can be shot in 3 different countries over a period of 10 weeks.
If you remember, that Wales stuff was shot like four months after we wrapped Principal.
Tell me, how did it happen, for God's sake?
Okay, this is coming up to an interesting sequence here, what I guess we call the montage sequence, the training montage sequence. And in the script, this was written completely differently, and it's a whole series of complete scenes, which went on and on forever and ever and ever. And basically myself and Peter and and we just got together and basically put together the montage to music. And I think at that stage I was still doing a lot of videos, and I think it turned out to be sort of like a small video.
until the time of the gathering.
I think originally this sequence lasted maybe 12 minutes. It was eventually cut down to about 3 minutes.
We will feel an irresistible pull towards a faraway land to fight for the prize. Come on!
This is it here.
Master!
This beach is right next to the beach they shot Local Hero at. So they refer to that as the Local Hero Beach, and they refer to our beach as the Highlander Beach.
All on the
It's all
Scottish Hollywood Star Tour. Now you'll notice that is not Sean, that is
Mr. Anderson.
Miss Anderson, yes.
That's not a real tree.
Now you'll notice a lot of these shots of Sean was one of the last things we did, and I needed a lot of different reactions. So basically we just ran the camera, ran 2 cameras on Sean, and said, now laugh, look angry, look left, look right, and we just rolled the camera for like 10 minutes and got maybe 40 different reactions, which are interspersed throughout the sequence.
Some of the footage that's coming up is stuff that was shot with the 2nd or 3rd unit, the flying unit. They shot them in Skye.
In Skye, which is a fantastic island off Scotland.
And they also were shot with Anderson as the double of Sean, the helicopter shots, were they not, Russell?
They were landed on the rock from the helicopter, and then the helicopter filmed around them. But all that, again, all this is Skye, which is rather a prehistoric sort of landscape.
And
this is not Sean, this is not Chris, these are doubles.
This is all Skye?
All Skye.
The stag.
The stag. Now the stag was a big nightmare. You'll notice that stag had water in the background because that's footage from National Geographic. Then you'll cut to the other stag that we had on location. Now, because of the time of year we shot the film, all stags had lost their horns, so we had to glue some horns on this stag, put it to sleep with a vet, all done properly, and then wait for it to wake up.
Well.
Now, as you can see, it's trying to get the horns off its head.
You promised never to tell the story, Russell.
And now the stag ran away.
We couldn't find it.
We couldn't find the stag. Was found 25 miles down the coast without the horns.
Pretty close to a true story.
It did get rid of the horns, which was good news.
Now, Sean was dying at the end of this race, wasn't he?
Right. And you'll notice that the McLeod character who jumps is wearing underpants. Which is not the traditional
That
way.
was definitely not Sean and Christoph.
No. And as this is not Sean and
Well,
Christoph.
at least not on that night.
Yeah.
Again,
This sequence is shot in reverse too, because the helicopter blades were very close to the rock on the other side. So to maneuver that shot around, they had to do it in reverse. And again, this is in reverse too. So these actors are acting in reverse. So the helicopter had to basically get itself steady and then pull out. This is the Luma shot.
What's a Luma?
A Luma is basically a remote camera on a long arm. And we use a lot of Luma in this film.
You found it a very helpful tool, did you?
It's a wonderful tool. There's a lot of variations on the Luma now, but the Luma is one of the originals and still one of the best probably.
So it's a crane with a camera on the end and a video monitor.
Right, and you operate it with little wheels somewhere else, and basically you can do a lot of different things with it.
You used that very effectively in the last fight sequence, did you not?
Right. This is the village in the story, and all these buildings were basically pre-made down in London and then shipped up to Scotland. If you notice in the scene later on, you'll see Peter Davis's son.
Thank you.
Fabulous performance.
Joshua will be very happy to get his appropriate credit.
Absolutely.
Now, these are all Scottish extras dressed with authentic local garb.
Those are real Scottish sheep.
There he is there with a hat.
Cows. And no chickens were killed during this production.
A family. We cannot have children.
That won't please Heather.
What's haggis? That's sheep stomach.
Sheep stomach.
Right.
It's stuffed with barley and
Wheat and barley. Yes.
wheat and barley. Have you ever?
And a little shot of
We
whiskey
ate
on it.
haggis up there.
Yeah,
It was
we
good.
did.
It was good.
That's all there was.
I'll be off now. I fancy buying myself a new dress.
I thought she was fantastic. I think Beatty is a fabulous young actress and very, very, very right for this role. There was a really nice chemistry, I thought, between her and Chris.
MacLeod. I was born.
Chemistry between Sean and Christopher at this point was quite good, was it not?
Yes.
Last was Shakiko.
It was almost like the old actor with a new actor. It was almost like a parallel between
what
the
they play as
characters
characters, yes.
were in this particular film.
It is the only one of its
Yes. It took a number of takes for this particular shot because there was a lot of dates to remember.
when Shakiko was shattered. I would save you.
Well, Masamune,
Right. From 13...
a famous and authentic Japanese sword maker.
Now, where was this shot?
Now,
Russell?
now, here we are in the old factory back in London, where we built the interior of the forge. Now, the platforms that they're sitting on was a little hairy because these platforms are meant to collapse later on in the movie. So they basically just had small support structures put through them.
Now, you built this main set, and then you built other small parts of the set for the fight sequence, did you not?
For the collapsing sequence, yes.
Who is the Kurgan? And where does he come from?
And this is Glencoe.
Back in Glencoe.
Steps of Russia. For amusement, they tossed children into pits.
A lot of the time we were just rushing ahead trying to beat the weather that was coming up the valley.
He is the strongest of all the immortals.
They told us we should never shoot in Scotland this early in the year, didn't they, Russell?
If he wins the prize, mortal man would suffer an eternity of darkness.
And you sort of wonder when you arrive there and every rock is covered in moss. You sort of got to get an idea that it's probably damp.
Well, wasn't there also like a sort of a cliff about not far from Sean there, and his horse was a little skittish, and it was a good thing that he knew how to ride a little bit, or
Absolutely.
This
Here
might
we're back in the set, and this shot was accomplished by the camera moving through the window hole here, and then the set is pulled apart on wheels, so then the camera can continue its descent down
This
again on the loomer. This sequence I find always very interesting
Unfortunately,
because what happens here, this is Clancy Brown who plays the Kurgan. This is his first day of filming. And what actually comes up here, what happens here was actually quite extraordinary. On the first take, Clancy is about to burst through the door. And what he did, he burst through the door and he was so nervous. We rehearsed that he's meant to cut the table in half, but he actually jumps through the door, leaps at Sean, and cuts across the candelabras and whatever on the table. He nearly decapitates Sean, and the sword breaks and goes over the cameraman's head. Sean storms off the set. It's nearly the end of production. This is obviously take 2.
Sean was not.
After Sean came back from his trailer. Clancy was very upset. He apologized. It was one of those things. The nervousness was all built
His
up.
adrenaline was a little too
Yeah,
high.
this is what he was meant to do. Right.
it was, yeah, it was a very surprising moment to watch.
Yes, the look on Sean's face was quite extraordinary.
Sean was quite surprised. Now again, this was all at Jacob Street Studio.
Right. And a lot of combination of Sean and the stunt
Bubbles.
double. I guess it was sort of a radical idea, the fact that these guys are going to fight in a stone building, and for the sheer fact that they're having a sword fight in a building, they managed to pull the building down. I don't know how we got away with it.
Well, they're kind of magical characters.
I guess that's what it was.
Now, was that a real ceiling piece?
Oh, yeah.
My cut has improved your voice.
Again, this was done with shooting all of Sean's part primarily to get him
Correct.
finished within his schedule.
And then, because we probably had to fly to Scotland the next day, and then coming back in New Zealand double with Clancy. It's rather a complicated sequence. The set is not huge. There were originally in the storyboards and in the design of it, there was meant to be some exterior model shots of the forge collapsing, but they were never done. But you know, I think the sequence,
It works.
it works. That was the platform that Sean was sitting on earlier.
Just had to pull away one pin.
Now, Bill was always ecstatic about the backgrounds in this particular sequence.
Bill was never happy with the
Lightning.
sky, the theatrical sky.
Well, there was a thought that we might have had a little more lightning and a little more this and that, but that's why you get the big bucks, Russell.
Yeah, but I think it was the semi-abstract clouds, yeah?
Clancy died well here.
Now, it made it a great theatrical moment. It made very
and
operatic.
I think the film allows that. Clancy definitely made a very good villain.
As you said earlier, he was absolutely into it at this point.
Right. So as you see, these were sets were actually next to each other. There was the forge, then the staircase, and the collapsing wall. So there's basically 3 or 4 sets all lined up in this long studio with the same background, one long painted sky. And so basically you would just like film one and then move along and just keep filming down the line.
More than 7 or 8 setups in a day, Russell?
We did a lot of setups. This was filmed rock and roll, so to speak.
Tonight you sleep in hell. There can be only one.
I forget the name of the chap who was doing the special effects, like the beheading. But I know, not this beheading, but later on there was a beheading which was very unsuccessful.
And we definitely won't mention his name.
Yeah. Well, he had a heart attack.
Did we have a causation? Was there
Oh, we did.
a causal effect of
He
that?
had it on location.
Yes?
Yeah. I screamed at him.
Now, all this animation obviously was post animation,
Right.
and you had a team of animators, partially from the Netherlands and
Oh,
England, and
absolutely.
I'd like to speak.
This is the first time that she comes in contact with him.
Oh, I'm afraid that won't.
Another one of those dialogue scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
scenes you love so much, Russell.
We've already met.
And who is that strange woman sitting at the table?
I'd like some advice.
Are you the kind of woman who takes
Now, her
advice about what?
the scene of your assistant there, Russell, was background information on her was cut out of the U.S. version, was it not?
That's correct. I mean, that whole relationship is quite important to the film. And it was only really in the European version where It's explained.
Dealing exotic weapons. Can I show you something in 18th century silver?
That's the
Otherwise, you seem to think that she's just this nosy secretary.
that's the famous World War II scene that we'll show later on. That gives the background of her.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm standing there, and there's Brenda, our little Brenda.
You sure?
No, I think I'd just done a Doritos commercial. I think I...
Either that or those were our product placement deals.
What are you looking at?
This is the sequence
The eyes in the back of your head.
which was cut
People asking about you.
again in the American version.
What am I supposed to say?
And to me, I think it's quite a pivotal scene,
Tell them I'm immortal.
story-wise. Nice transition. But now here we are in World War II. Now this scene was shot much later, probably in the editing stages. It was in the original script, it was taken out of the original script, and so it was never filmed in production. We put the film together and we realized that it should never have been taken out of the original script because it's a very important sequence. Because what he's going to find here is a young girl. And the young girl turns out to be the blonde assistant that he has in New York. So this is a little refugee girl that he saves in World War II. He doesn't age, she does. And so they end up having this wonderful
It's a very
father-daughter relationship.
And you know, who
And that
knows
is- yeah.
what they might have had
And it
along the
really
way.
turns into a love relationship, and it's actually quite touching in this version, I think. This sequence also was shot with basically my video crew on a weekend, and this is the German there actually took over. He was my assistant director. That is Nick Rogue's son, the director, and he was my assistant director. The actual actor that was going to play the Nazi stormed off because basically we couldn't even afford sandwiches that day. This was done very cheaply.
Well, they could eat at night.
They can eat at night. So, it's Waldo Rogue? I think his name's Waldo Rogue. Anyway, I'm sorry if I got his name wrong. But he just stepped in and did it wonderfully. What we also found out is this location where we were filming, someone came running over to us after we did all those explosions early on. We noticed all this orange smoke around everywhere and dust. And what we were doing, we were actually exploding on old bricks from World War II where they'd buried a whole lot of cyanide dust. And so everyone, including Christoph and the crew, was sort of running around breathing cyanide dust. We were told that we'd probably only get mildly sick from it.
Also, in fairness and in a most unusual situation, the director and the producers personally paid to shoot this scene.
We paid, yes,
split
we
it.
wrote the check for that. What martyrs, eh?
That's why it was a very small crew.
That's why there were no sandwiches.
But to not have that scene in the American version really was quite a shame because it really explained
You wonder why he has this particular relationship with this woman.
who went from a daughter to a lover to a mother figure.
Sister, the whole thing, it's the whole gamut.
So now he's going to have dinner with Roxanne Hart, who is after him, and who he sort of knows is after him.
Brenda.
But Brenda and Christoph, Brenda and McLeod, did not work so well the first time, did they?
The relationship didn't work, and also, for some reason, even though we approved the wardrobe on Roxanne, on film the wardrobe just it didn't work, and so it was a combination. I guess we probably would have lived with the wardrobe if the performances had been the relationship had worked, but. We came back a couple of weeks later, reshot the scene, pretty well shot for shot, and it worked very well the second time.
I think also it was because this was...
Actually, no, I think I shot the scene better the second time.
I think also the first time we shot the scene was very early in the show, and the
yes.
chemistry was definitely not there.
Yeah. So all things considered, it was definitely worth doing again because it's quite an important scene.
Do you know what you're doing?
Yes, I think that little room in the background you see there, I think I played most of the scene in that room the first time around. And it was one of those dreadful things that happen when you get stuck in a location you basically film yourself into a corner. Every director's nightmare.
I like your plays, Brenda.
He plays well in this. He has fun with this scene.
He's
Well,
a,
yeah,
he's
that
a handsome
little
devil,
piece.
isn't he?
Yeah.
Interesting view.
You can see the modern technology in 1986.
I said interesting view.
Isn't it great?
I think we also changed a bit of the
He's
set,
wearing-
set dressing
Yes.
in the room as well.
Correct, and he's wearing Armani.
You never told me what you do for a living.
You're getting
You can never go wrong with
You're getting a suit for
You
that,
can't
Russell?
go.
Exactly. We don't need wardrobe.
I love Armani.
In acquisition.
One suit apiece,
That's a
Russell.
replica of the real Hennessy bottle from the year that he is talking about.
That's correct.
Especially the samurai.
And this little sequence here, where he sniffs the brandy, was actually, the idea actually was given to me by Jim Steinman, who wrote and produced Meatloaf. And I had dinner with Jim in Amsterdam, and he would open a bottle of light wine from 1940, and he would get the cork, and he would sniff the air between the cork and the wine as it opened. And he would go into a trance, and he said, well, I just sniffed air from 1947. And he believed it, and so I told Chris this when he sniffed it, and that's how he performs this scene.
Montgolfier brothers went up in their first balloon.
He does believe it, doesn't he?
Mm.
And England recognized the independence of the United States.
Is that right?
Turned out to be quite a good scene.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's for you.
It's funny, Chris, I was reminded of the thing that sparkled in Chris's eyes. Chris needed a special light on the camera. We used to call it the Chris light. And you put a special light right next to the lens to sort of sparkle his eyes. It really works well. But this is the whole way it was shot differently. This whole mirror sort of dialogue sequence is different in the second version.
But that lighting thing was something that you had adapted from a technique from black and white photography when they used to use a complementary color to the eyes for a light on the eyes to make them pop, and you adapted that for color
Correct.
photography.
Yes.
In your apartment. You remember him. Mine's sitting tailing me.
What are you gonna do?
The question is,
For an extended scene, and I think the scene's almost 5 minutes long, it holds you.
And there's a lot of information.
I am not looking for a killer. I am looking for a sword, the one used on Fazil. I found pieces of it under the garden. I only want to see the samurai.
why?
I told you because it's not supposed to exist. I dated people.
That's a very fast speech she's giving there. A lot of information.
She does it
She
well.
did it very well. And this is so good. I mean, she's basically an extremely proficient stage actress. And she can hold her lines.
The Wright brothers ever flew.
This is crazy.
Every once in a while, Armani's, the collar could be a little. Meaning no offense.
We're not going to get those suits, Panzer.
I never have.
They don't make extra longs.
Now, where was this, Russell?
This again was shot like later in the editing process because a lot of the structure of the film changed during the edit. Now here we go into, I think, probably my favorite song in the movie, and I think this also shows Michael Kamen and Queen working so wonderfully together.
And they really did work very well.
They worked extremely well, and so what happened is that Brian May from Queen sees the scene, writes the lyrics, and then basically works with Kamen. So you'll notice that the song carries on, and then at a certain point, Michael Kamen takes over the melody of the song with a sweeping orchestra. And I just think it was a perfect match of basically modern rock and roll band, so to speak, blending with traditional orchestration. So this montage is meant to obviously take place over a number of years. Now this shot here, there was no snow. So basically around the house, we sprayed foam on a bright summer day. There's the foam there on the house, and that's about as much foam as there was. And then the rest is painted as a matte painting. I think when people saw the rushes of this little farmhouse in the middle of a valley, which looked like this, green like this, with this house covered in foam, I think the word was, "This shot will never be in the movie." Guess who said that?
I think
it certainly wasn't
you, Peter?
I think it might have been me.
When Peter saw the matte painting, he said, "This is the best fucking shot in the movie."
You quoted me well, Russell.
And then there was like a makeup challenge.
Ah, was that a challenge?
Not terribly successful either.
No, it wasn't one of our better moments.
No.
The whole thing that's coming up is to age her from the 18-year-old to the 70-year-old.
But when she came out of the trailer with the makeup, and she'd been in this trailer for like 4 hours.
No, much longer.
It was nearly all day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
She came out of the trailer and she looked like something out of the island of Dr. Moreau. And we just shut down. We said, no. So we eventually went back and shot the scenes in Wales. The makeup still isn't that successful, but it was better than what was presented to us.
Now, this shot, if I remember correctly, was shot in Jacob's studio on a pickup basis.
Yes.
And surprisingly worked relatively well.
It did. Again, they knew each other quite well here, so I think the chemistry is quite good. I think she did quite a nice job as playing the older dying woman.
Well, this is like
Again, I think this is one of these classic scenes too. I think where the music doesn't go against it. The music just moves the scene along quite well emotionally.
Beautifully. And this is the essence of Highlander.
Well, I think this is what attracted all of us to this film, was not so much the action and the special effects and whatever, but basically the epic romanticism of it. I think was the thing that I thought was wonderfully original about this piece.
I wanted to have your children.
They would have been strong and fine.
Don't see me, Connor. Let me die in peace. Where are we?
We're in the Highlands.
But the mute does carry, this song does carry this scene very well.
This is the song they sang at...
And this song's been now moved over, it continues on in the TV series.
Absolutely. And this song was the closing number at Wembley for Freddie's memorial service.
Yeah. I became very close with Freddie during the recording of this, and then ongoing through a number of videos, and we became very close friends, and a great loss.
And the boots I made for you. Good night, my buddy Heather.
This was also shot in Glencoe, Russell?
Yes, and that's the fading out of that part of his life. Central Park, New York.
Castigar.
Hey, Castigar.
Now this, there was actually a scene
Good to see you.
that we shot that follows this particular scene. They meet on the bridge, they chat, they show each other, or he has the whiskey or whatever, and they meet each other. They then walk off, and we shot another scene where they go to a bar and get rather drunk.
Why did we use that scene, Russell?
Because it wasn't very good. So you'll notice that, again, the transition coming up is not that great because it was never really designed to be the way it was. So, in films, a lot of the time, the structuring never goes along the way the screenplay is. It's restructured in the editing.
So,
I guess the scene wasn't that important, wasn't that necessary.
I think really your first statement was right. It wasn't very good.
It wasn't a very good scene. Yeah.
I think we should have a party. Oh, no. I remember
If we hadn't lost the B negative, we could be able to show it as a sidebar, but somehow.
The bad scenes. Actually, there's that. From I remember that scene. There's also another action scene that's not in the film.
Yeah, the computer
guy.
scene.
Again,
Now, that wasn't a bad scene.
It wasn't a bad scene, but it just seemed to be extraneous.
Yeah, it didn't.
In
it
the
didn't,
final thing.
Didn't move it along.
Well, it's a little painful when you actually have to
I know,
throw out quite a good sequence.
Now, this is our first day of shooting, Russell.
This is actually the first day of shooting. Yes.
How'd you feel that day?
I felt very good.
Christ, I've gone blind.
Funny scene.
It was.
There were more stills taken this day than for the next, like, 3 weeks.
Well, you know, you put someone in a frock and those still photographers.
Oh, we all wanted to get our picture taken.
Oh, that's right.
But this was a good scene.
The villain chap here is now in EastEnders. I don't know if anyone knows EastEnders over here. I think it's on Channel 59.
Yes, well, you just...
Where did we shoot this, Russell? It was right outside of
Some
London?
manor house outside of London.
Began with an H.
Like something house.
No.
It's interesting in the American version, as we get toward the end of the scene, they cut.
They cut him being shot, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. This portion, I think, was cut out in the American version.
This is probably the broadest verging on slapstick humor in the film. And I guess it's a choice. And I don't think it's a bad choice. But the film goes, I think, from quite sincere honesty to that sort of spectrum of broadness.
Well, that's why, you know, part of it is why it was so hard for people to come to grips with, because it's like there's nothing else quite like it. I mean, there's so many emotional elements in it that you usually don't consider fitting together the way we tried to do it. This was an old hospital, wasn't it?
Old abandoned hospital in London. And you get these wonderful little character actors over there, like this guy. I think he's just terrific. And
didn't need makeup.
No, came dressed like that.
Owen herpes.
Do you understand? Good.
This time, Clancy was in full blown.
Get your head chopped off, asshole.
He was walking around with the Walkman, with the earphones, listening to heavy metal.
Absolutely. And this is the combination of New York, and then we go to basically a place.
This is
the old Docklands in London.
This is New York portion.
It's New York, and he turns the corner, and he'll now enter from New York magically into London here.
There was a lot of this matching between New York and London, especially at the end sequence on the sign.
What the hell?
Now this fight, I think, these guys were really in tune for this fight. I remember, I think this is the sequence with the explosions in this sequence, where we had like cops from 8 different counties come.
This is where we broke.
This erupted.
We broke windows
in like the business district of London.
Yes. You were.
Yeah. And in London with the IRA and whatever, they're a little spooked.
You're still on a list, actually, Russell. In London. You can't buy matches.
Because what happens? All these windows here are actually real thick lead glass Victorian windows, each like 1 inch thick, and we blew them because they were going to demolish this area. I normally wouldn't blow Victorian windows, but this place was going to be demolished, so they gave us permission.
You see it coming up.
That was the beheading I was very unhappy with.
You were happy with that?
No.
Was this a English actor or an American actor, Bill, who was playing that role?
Playing this role?
Yes.
I think this was an English. It was an English actor.
Yeah.
I mean, an American English actor.
not bad actually. This guy's been held up by wires, and this is before CGI wire removal, and you can't actually see the wires.
All the glowing obviously was post
animation, yes. And obviously when we shot this and with all the lights, we had no idea really what we were going to do for the effect.
But there were, I think, 11 cameras. We were all standing behind this thing with wearing hard hats and goggles and all this stuff, and it was all one explosion. I mean, everything happened.
It all happens within, the actual explosion all happens within a second and a half.
Right, yeah, just blam.
It all just goes bang. But with 7 or 8 cameras, the sequence goes on a bit with the explosions. This is 1 second away. Here we go. Probably the longest second in history, right?
And boy, was it loud.
Now, this is very funny. This sequence here, actually, I don't think we ever used the front shot, but this was shot by a French Steadicam operator who had a particular way of running with a Steadicam, like a ballet dancer, and he's brilliant Steadicam, but it's just the way he runs. And Clancy had to run in front of him, and Clancy couldn't stop laughing. So that's why I don't think we ever used the front shot of Clancy running, because Clancy could not keep a straight face. Yeah.
So we're in London here, then when we turn the corner, are we in New York, Russell?
Yes, when it comes out, this is still London. And then this is New York with a stunt double.
For Clancy and the gal?
Yeah.
That was a long night.
Take it easy. I'm telling you, I checked everywhere with everybody. They're just on any witnesses.
This is the abandoned hospital.
People standing around, nobody saw a goddamn thing. Well, tell me about this Matunas. What is he, on drugs?
Well, he's a survival nut.
What do you mean, survival?
He's into guns. He was a Marine.
All these dialogue scenes.
Well, yeah. There's one in every film.
You need
you got to have one every 10 minutes.
You need a little exposition.
Russell. Just moving the story along here.
I understand you saw the guy that stuck you. Is that right?
Maybe we should have one of the writers here next time we do this.
Right.
They'll explain it all to us.
Come on, quit kidding, Matunas. It was dark in that alley. The freak was trying to kill me.
No, both Peter and Larry at this point were definitely well into this. Living it, breathing it. Sending us daily memos.
You don't run about the press.
Well, adapting constantly to the, these changes in production. Russell would have an idea, and production would have an idea, and things that we wanted to do we couldn't do, and how else you would change it to do something. And
it's an evolving thing.
Yeah, they were scribbling.
Hey, listen. You think you could work with one of our artists, maybe?
If you notice at the bottom of the bed where the guy with the blue John is standing, there's a bed tray on the floor. And I actually had him stand in it. That was another example of over-the-top broad humour, which was cut out of the scene, thank God.
Peter Honus, who was your editor on this, Russell, did quite a great job.
Very nice job. And I was very happy to get the One Step Beyond reference in here.
It's getting like one step beyond.
Yeah, listen.
Yes, that's right.
It made my day. Actually made my week.
Guys blowing in the dark, for Christ's sake.
Love this headline.
Yes. That's the hotel we were staying in.
Yes?
That's why it's
in the background.
Russell actually suggested that I make sure that the shot was just the way I wanted it, so that we would all make sure our hotel rooms were paid for. I thought it was very gracious of her.
Yes, I wasn't taking the cut on that one.
No, your room was a corner suite, Russell. And this was back in London.
Back in London.
Where was what library? This was a.
I think actually it's part of the GLC, or what was once called the GLC,
That's right.
which is no longer. The building is the
Greater
magnificent
London
building.
Council,
Yeah,
right.
the old Greater London Council, which is now no longer.
Now, even though this is one of your story scenes, Russell, this worked quite well. This told the story in a reasonable way.
Exactly. Now I remember this is another scene that was shot twice.
Yeah, this was shot in your office.
That is my office, yes. At the biscuit factory. But we shot this scene twice because the first actor was drunk. Do you remember?
Oh, God, yes, he was.
And so this was shot many weeks later, but the first actor we had was completely off his
Blotto.
brain. Blotto. Yes. Yeah. Would actually fall asleep during the scene. And she looked like that at him.
This was, we'll discuss using this, but this was the second makeup person. Remember the first, the head makeup lady wasn't there, and there was a whole thing about whether the second makeup lady could do it. And she actually did sort of quite a good job.
All the way back to 5 previous owners to the original guy, Montague.
Yeah, this was yet another British public library-like area,
Yes, I think
which we built.
I think it could actually be the Liberal Club.
What were we doing in a liberal
That's
club?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's scary.
But I always thought this was an interesting sort of subplot in the film of her sort of detective work.
This worked quite well. I know we struggled a little bit on this, but it worked all right.
And you know, these were the days when computer screens had green writing.
In the 1850s.
This film's looking very old.
Oh, we are very old.
Pretending to croak every once in a while, leaving all his goods to kids who've been corpses.
She's starting to get it.
And assuming their identities.
It's not possible.
Hey, the pretty startling concept. Immortality. This is another shot of another Sheraton hotel, just to make sure that
Because that's where the rest of the crew was staying.
Exactly, not quite as nice as our hotel.
Right. Now this is the church in Kilburn, I think.
Yeah.
This is a rather touchy scene for a church to allow itself for this scene to be filmed, and I think this church was running a little short on money.
I think that we looked at a lot of churches before that we found a church that really needed a location fee enough to allow this scene to be filmed.
Yeah. Because it's a tough scene.
It's a scene that gets some comment. Clancy's way out there on this one.
And this version actually is more out there than the American version.
Yes, this one has
there were certain things cut out of the American version that are back in this one.
Yes, specifically where he...
With the priest.
With the priest. Where he licks the priest's hand. The American distributor definitely didn't think that was something the American public should see.
Great costume.
It's always great to have a great entrance. I think every actor wants a great entrance like this.
Castigated.
Well, especially if you've got a great ass.
You and I remain.
What can you say to that? Also, Clancy's, the prosthetics on him on the...
exactly.
Quite interesting.
I am in disguise.
Where'd you come up with that idea for around his neck, Russell?
Recognize me.
Where did that come from?
You know, it's such a long time, I completely forget.
Your head.
It's very strange.
You might have been in the pub one night.
It probably was, yes. I remember the discussions with the tattoo on the side of his head. But I think it was just because it was all around that punk period. But when he was in this costume, this is when he was fully insane.
Ramirez's blade did not
He
cut.
was.
Fully insane. I mean, the wardrobe people couldn't talk to him because he said, "Go away, I'm doing my ritual." And he was doing a ritual.
I took his head and raped his woman before his blood.
It's classic. There are a number of actors or whatever that when a certain part of the costume goes on, they no longer become that person. They are the character, and it was very true with him.
I see. Ramirez lied. She was not his woman. She was your woman.
We have to be very careful with the prosthetics too with Clancy, because he'd just done The Bride with Sting, where he played the monster, the Frankenstein monster. And he had all the prosthetic makeup on his face, and he went into, they had to shut production down for 3 weeks because he's totally allergic to the glue on his skin. So we were very cautious of that.
The amount of time that he'd have to...
Yeah, we could only keep it on for a certain amount of time.
And in our first meeting with him at the Athenaeum Hotel,
Yeah.
right? When we talked about the prosthetic, the ball thing, he was a little freaked.
Totally. Yeah.
Didn't want to do it.
Right.
But you silver-tongued him into it, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah.
I think we drew a picture of how he will look, and it's pretty impressive. I think. Why wouldn't you want to look like that?
Hey.
We will meet soon enough.
God, he was out there on this.
This is the house of God. People are trying to pray. You're disturbing them.
He cares about these helpless mortals.
Of course he cares. He died for our sins.
That shall be his undoing.
That's definitely radical framing.
Hey.
Now this is the sequence where, this is where it was edited. This bit here.
The priest was actually an Orthodox rabbi.
I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away.
Clancy wrote that line.
He definitely took this part of the scene.
That was his scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Chris came to me and he said, "I'm finding it really tough, this scene." It was Clancy's scene. It was a hard one to, you couldn't top it. You couldn't
take it away from him.
No. So, I guess that's why the character leaves.
I'm looking for a dead guy named Nash. He died at birth in Syracuse, New York.
All right. Come on.
So this is quite a pivotal scene coming up, and to introduce the scene, we decided to go for a rather dramatic entrance shot with the loomer. The set was designed that the ceiling would come out so the loom could come down into this room, which I think gave you a sense that you sat up, and because this is quite a revelation of a scene.
There were 18 takes of this particular shot, Russell. I
18
remember it well.
Yes, it was tough because again the equipment in those days was not as good as it is today.
Well, it's unofficially known as the barf shot.
I know after 18 takes, a lot of the crew were walking out getting rather sick with that spinning.
I've been alive for 4.5 centuries.
It's a wonderful scene, though. The reveal.
Well, everybody's got their problems.
But I have noticed in watching it is that he holds the knife out, but you don't have the audience. We're not seeing the knife. So he says, "Take it," and she looks down. So you sort of wonder what he's holding until now.
Well, it's sort of
And she laughs.
It's sort of a giant replica, isn't it?
He was born in 1518 in the village of
Wonderful moment here.
Yeah. And Kamen's music works very well here at this moment.
Michael's stuff was fantastic in this entire movie.
But I think this is a very successful kiss coming out.
Actually, one of the great arpeggios in the score.
We're holding on that one. Just leave that one alone, Russell.
Yes, don't go there.
I'd like to request that the music be included in this point.
It is hard to believe that Michael did his last 20 minutes of music in the last 24 hours, isn't it?
The score was written very quickly, yes. I think he spent a long time on the car park sequence and then did the rest of the movie.
And the theme. I mean, there was a lot of time spent.
Now this sequence here, again, was a reshoot. There was a whole dialogue sequence written with them in bed.
Right, talking about Napoleon.
Talking about Napoleon. And again, it was a scene that just, it didn't work.
I think we shot this as a...
To the point where Christopher was on the bed acting, doing Greystoke impersonations.
Yeah, I think... and here's also a scene that was not in the American version.
Can't get in.
The zoo scene.
Didn't you?
Right. I think that's correct.
The Brooklyn Zoo.
But I think the scene before this, Russell, wasn't that shot as during post-production?
It was shot in post-production, yes. But again, yes, this scene is cut out of the American version. I think it's...
But the previous scene was shot, the love scene was shot on the set.
Where the final battle is.
Where the final battle is.
And it was shot in a very short period of time.
And it was shot at 4 a.m. in the morning in the middle of this very damp warehouse. And yeah, they were cold. Now we're back in London.
Hello, pretty.
Clancy is in full role here.
Yeah. He was actually quite scary in this scene. I think she was actually quite terrified. It was just done in maybe 2 or 3 Steadicam shots. Full blast.
Now this was shot in New York. I think it was done in 5 or 6 days of...
It's mainly second unit.
Yes.
I shot the actors here, and then I think the second unit went off.
Didn't Andy Armstrong...
Andy Armstrong was the second unit director on the sequence, yes.
But it was all shot in New York City, was it not?
Yes.
We're coming up to the section where he goes over the 59th Street Bridge, and this is where you convince Freddie Mercury to sing New York,
right.
New York.
I had Clancy sing, because it was just an idea, so I had Clancy start singing New York, New York, and she starts telling him to shut up. And
how did you convince Freddie to do this?
I'm really not sure, because I know he was. That was me.
And this was, some of these were out of the out of the American version, weren't they? They were cut out of the American version.
That 3-frame shot was my cameo.
Talk to your agent. The only payoff we got from the 7 Santini brothers was T-shirts.
Bad deal.
Very bad deal, none of which fit me anymore.
How do you feel about this this sequence, Russell?
It's okay. I mean, I think considering the fact that there's probably only three stunt cars involved in the whole sequence, it looks bigger than what it was.
For the money involved and the time, I think it worked reasonably well.
It's fine. It's fine. New York is a tough city to film,
So here we are going over the 59th Street Bridge.
And the Silver Cup. Now, this is where the final climax is going to take place. The final climax was written at various places. At one point, it was going to be on the Statue of Liberty and
Amusement park.
It went through a whole different sort of.
There was scouting, driving around. Remember, we wanted the Pepsi sign.
The Pepsi sign. It was various different ideas.
They didn't
skyscrapers, and eventually, I forget who it was, but someone came up with the idea of why not the Silver Cup.
And we had a problem with building the set in London on the stage and then using the actual and filming on both and matching back and forth.
Right. So this scene here, which is in all versions, without the World War II sequence, this scene makes no sense at all.
Well, aren't we lucky that we're watching this version?
I guess so.
You're not coming back, are you?
But it'd be interesting for you to note, when you see the Silver Cup sequence coming up, the fight on the rooftop of Silver Cup, all shots looking towards the letters, towards the red letters, all shots looking towards are shot in London on stage. And the sign is at least 1/3 smaller. Maybe half the size. Half the size. It's tiny. It is tiny. The sign, when you look away from the back of the sign towards the city, is New York, and you'll notice the sign is huge. We get away with it. It's one of those things that happens. I guess now that I've told you, you'll probably.
No, I think you did a very good job of.
Yeah, but there is a complete difference in scale, about half the size. This is the actual. This is New York.
And then when you do the reverse on this, it's on the stage in London.
And they're both shot like 10 weeks apart.
We shot the London stuff first.
So now we're in London.
And all the stuff with the water falling.
And this is London with rather a bad matte painting. Now that's a fake little cardboard train being pulled on a wire.
Worked beautifully.
Yes. So all that stuff is studio, and then you'll cut to New York.
This is New York?
Yeah.
We did make Christoph
climb that many times.
Yeah.
Again, New York.
And it's a huge climb. So basically what you do is you film the sequence twice. You film it once in London, and then you go back and you just film the whole thing again with New York in the background.
The weather was like impossible. Remember, we had to stop shooting because the
electrical storms.
The electrical storm, and one of
the building next door across the road from us was hit.
And the grip decided that it was too dangerous to film.
Yes.
So we all went out and stood out there in the midst of the lightning storm, but it didn't change the mind of the crew.
Right. Well, eventually the city department came and pulled us off the roof for the rest of the night. We had to come back the next night. Huge electrical storm.
How many days were we up there in New York? 3 or 4 days on the side?
I think 2 nights.
No.
Yes, we were.
More.
No.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Now this was all in London, was it not?
Yep.
I was shot off a friend of mine's apartment.
Now this collapsing of the sign happened in one take, including all the water collapsing. Everything happened in one take. And basically what happened, the 2/3 of that sign is actually basically plastic with tin letters. And as these letters collapse, they unplug themselves from the electricity because this water now pours in there. So now you've got electricity and water and people. So the theory was the letters would disconnect themselves from the vaults before they hit the ground. The theory worked.
Did you explain this to the actors before?
Yeah, but Russell, remember the first time we shot this part and the water came down,
yes.
And then we were going back the next day for the shots,
studio fight.
the fight, but all the water had drained away.
Yes.
And we were not permitted to shoot there because it was like a DC, AC, some kind of question.
It was rather dangerous.
1 million gallons of water had...
right. So now we're in probably the second day, but all that collapse happened within like a 4-second period with like 15 cameras and a lot of fingers crossed.
Now, when they fall through at the end of this sequence into the...
They fall through to a different location, yeah? We ruined this camera.
Now, again, this is a New York portion, cutting back to a London portion.
And obviously we had no water on the roof in New York. Yeah. I think the map was okay. Somehow, for some reason, the film processing was not good. That one's okay. That map's quite good. So they fall to this roof, and then we go to the tobacco factory into the East End of London.
Now, this scene coming up was done...
We shot in a day.
Less than a day.
You
did fabulously with this particular
This sequence was shot very fast. Basically, it was 3 cameras lined up, and then some Luma shots. And the boys, their sword play is quite good in this.
They were into this.
Yeah.
Great image.
You primarily used your Luma here, didn't you, Russell?
It was, yeah, and the idea was to make this quite operatic and nearly like a stage. So you basically looked at the whole scene from one angle, like you were watching an piece of opera. Just keep it very simple, very stylized. Because the scene before had been so sort of messy and kinetic, and it was decided that this should be much simpler in style.
I love
now these Luma shots, and again I think also with a very nice piece of music, but this Luma shot is accomplished basically by me kicking the Luma, I think.
Yeah, I think it was like.
And so you kick it, and it freely flies across the floor, and then there's someone who owns the Luma at the other end trying to catch it.
It's a great shot.
No, but you also got such a great sense of scale of the fact that he was the underdog fighting this bigger guy.
Yeah. Now the sparking swords is accomplished by the guys actually have car batteries down by their feet, and they have wires going up their arms. One is on negative, one's on positive, and so basically there's a charge going through the swords. The handles get extremely hot, and they also get shocks quite occasionally. So we only do it a few times because there's quite a lot of voltage going through their bodies.
It was Sean's favorite thing, right?
Sean didn't like that one. So now we have the contacts in.
Great music here.
And a nice little bit of tongue action from Clancy coming out. Now that is longer on this version too, yeah. This, I think, was the biggest dilemma of the film coming up.
This was a quandary.
Because what you have here is supposedly the visualization of what the prize After you've killed the sole survivor is left after all the immortals, he claims the prize.
There can be only one.
Okay, so how do we visualize the prize? And this was quite a quandary. And so not quite knowing what to do, this is what we did.
Now, and behind us is now that's a, this was a combination of real lighting effects and what else was it?
Animation.
A lot of animation. A lot of animation.
This was all done.
The electricity holding him up is actually to cover up the wires holding him. But basically the idea was, demonic souls from the past.
These are some whole of all of the immortals that have gone before.
Right.
The eye shot there is great.
That's right, you see the wire? Yes. The sound man just pointed out.
When they
that
see
was
it,
the wire.
Russell says, we'll cut this out, but when they see it, they won't see the wire.
Right. This is my favourite bit when Chrysolite looks up at her and he's got a piece of black stuff in his nose. He sort of looks like the teddy bear sort of man.
Something out of Mary Poppins.
Yeah. He's got a little teddy bear nose. So, now you conned the Air Force, didn't you? What did you give them?
It wasn't conning exactly. That there was a sort of volunteer to create the illusion of where we were, whether we were really in the past, whether we were in the present. And that was the Scottish Air Force, that particular aircraft.
They gave us, what, 2 or 3 flybys?
3 flybys.
For what, 3 cases of wine?
I think it was all on the house, Russell.
They liked the picture.
I hadn't seen anything.
They liked the idea.
Okay, this is Wales. This was a reshoot again from scene we shot earlier.
Patience, Highlander. You have done well. But it will take time. Your generation is being born and dying.
I think this was done, because I always like those movies where you see, like, a reprise of the movie, the end of a movie.
Best hits.
You have power beyond imagination.
It seems like a sweet way to finish the movie.
Again, this was shot in Wales 3 or 4 months later, was it not, Russell?
Yes.
He's wearing my clothes.
We put together one of your rock and roll crews for this, didn't we?
Another rock and roll crew.
Looks quite like Scotland.
Mm.
I love this movie.
And that's all she wrote.
And finish you off with another It's a Kind of Magic from Queen.